subscriber, welcome to my channel. I am DJ, aka the Black Guy. If you're new here for the first time, hit that like button, subscribe button. Really appreciate it. Trying to get the 300 subscribers by the end of April. So we're back again after watching episode 2 of Halo the series. We're going to get a little another breakdown from Halo Canon channel. Again, go over there if you want some useful and knowledgeable Halo and lore information. But yeah, we're gonna watch his breakdown, Easter eggs, catch what I didn't catch, and see what he got to say. So here we go. He does a real good job of breaking it down. Dun, dun.
Welcome back, Canonites, for another breakdown of the Halo TV series.
He does a little.
As before, I'll break down the lore, references, and Easter eggs in the episode, often comparing them to core canon or the canon of the books, games, and most other Halo media. And as usual, these comparisons aren't necessarily criticisms unless directly specified.
It's a comic, though. Yeah,
Finally, before we begin today, I wanted to discuss a particularly infamous quote that's been making its way around the Halo community.
Protocol.
As many are likely aware, prior to the show's debut, Variety came out with an article talking about the production, which included this quote from Season 1 showrunner Stephen Kane. "We didn't look at the game, we didn't talk about the game, we talked about the characters and the world, so I never felt limited by it being a game." Now, when I heard this, I liked what I was hearing. Halo is far more than its games, especially if you want to adapt it for TV or as a movie. The Halo games would not make good movies. I'm sorry. They were crafted for the experience of a first-person shooter, meaning that any story adapted from them is, by its very nature, going to have to draw from the expanded universe or original story beats.
I agree with that.
Others, of course, had different opinions. I'm not going to say that one opinion is right or wrong or worth more than another, but I do feel that many fans have taken this quote so far out of context that it's basically meaningless. In Variety's article, Kane's quote comes after a paragraph about spending several days at what you could call a Halo boot camp, where they were just learning about the lore and universe. Additionally, however, Kane has since revealed on Twitter that the producers did start by studying the games, then headed out to 343 for the aforementioned boot camp. Love or hate the show, let's at least make sure that we're all on the same page. You can say the show doesn't quote-unquote get Halo or whatever, but let's stop pretending that the showrunners and producers didn't do their homework. With that out of the way, let's dive into episode 2 of the Halo TV series.
Hey, I mean, it's not like it's not
After
Halo.
A recap of the previous episode, we opened 22 years in the past, so about 2530, on a young John 117 in the Spartan sleeping quarters. Around him, we can spot a 143 for Roma 143 and 005 for James 005. In core canon, Roma 134 was the intelligence specialist of Black Team, a group of Spartan 2s that reported directly to ONI, whereas most Spartan 2s report to Naval Special Weapons or NAVSPEC-WEP. James 005 was a Spartan who appeared in Halo the Fall of Reach, losing an arm to a Hunter assault cannon and later lost to space when a plasma bolt damaged his jetpack during the Fall of Reach.
I think I remember that.
John exits the facility carrying what might be an MA5K carbine, a cut-down version of the MA5B assault rifle, before meeting with Soren 066. In the background, we can spot longsword fighters. It's revealed that John and Soren were planning to escape together, though John is apparently having second thoughts and tries to bring Soren back in. Soren refuses, showing how the Spartan augmentations have deformed his arm. In core canon, Soren's body rejected the muscular enhancements and thyroid implant, and it was only through the carbide ceramic ossification of his bones, the process that makes Spartan 2 bones virtually unbreakable, that Soren survived. When presenting his arm, we can actually see the ceramic coating on his bones and the warped muscle. In canon, though, the side effects left him far more deformed, though, interestingly, also the strongest of the Spartans, just because of how much muscle mass he gained. Anyway, though, John ultimately gives Soren 5 minutes to escape. As we learn later, Soren's escape attempt went about as well as it did in core canon. He was shot down over Reach and had to survive on
barking beetles
before eventually escaping to the rubble, though Soren's fate after he was shot down was never explored in core canon. Additionally, it was originally Randall 037 who caught Soren trying to desert. This is somewhat ironic given that Randall would eventually take on the name Randall Aiken and reject being a Spartan. This scene additionally echoes more aspects of Halo the Cold Protocol, which featured Spartan Grey Team, a group of Spartans that were notably more independent
I just started rereading that.
During training, often tried to escape the Spartan facility. Another major difference here is Soren having Mjolnir armor, something he was never able to do in core canon. Future episodes should hopefully get into more details on the Silver Timeline Spartan 2 program and what specifically happened with Soren. It also seems like Mjolnir's design hasn't changed much in 22 years. We then cut to Master Chief and Quan traveling through slipspace. In the books, slipspace is always described as basically pitch black, though that obviously gets updated for the games since, nothingness generally doesn't work on the screen. For the TV series, we have a large blue and black nothingness, while the Condor, in this case, is surrounded by a multicolored
I like the way that looked.
In core canon, while traveling through slipspace, ships are surrounded by a quantum field of, quote, normal space. I honestly love this visualization of slipspace. After the opening, we arrive back on Reach, where we find Dr. Halsey and Fleet Admiral Terrence Hood discussing the recent events and plans to deal with the Master Chief. I absolutely love Keir Dulia's Hood. He feels perfectly in character.
Yeah.
Like in the core canon, Hood seems to be on the side of the Spartans, encouraging Halsey to share any plan she has to remedy the situation with the UNSC Security Council. And like core canon, Halsey seems to be manipulating Hood, in this case leaving out that Parangoski had already shot down the Cortana project. Later, when meeting with the Council, Halsey essentially strong-arms Admiral Parangoski into approving the Cortana plan, saying that it'll allow for more control over the Spartans while further enhancing them. This isn't too far off from core canon, as Cortana did provide the Master Chief with a performance boost by making communication between his neural implant and the Mjolnir armor more efficient. Although it sounds like in the TV show, Cortana will have control to some extent over the Chief. In core canon, it was particularly noted that Cortana would never be able to take control of the armor. Meanwhile, the Spartans of Silver Team prepare to go after the Chief and bring him back. Kai-125 seems particularly concerned about the Chief, which makes me wonder if, like John, she might be experiencing something. She was in the cave with him.
That's true.
Although I could also just be reading way too much into this.
No, I'd say the same
Spartans
thing.
Depart, Vanek assures Kai that the Chief always has a plan.
He's like a stormtrooper.
Which we get to see in the next scene as Quan and Chief exit slipspace into an asteroid field, the Condor's proximity alarm blaring.
Sit down, buckle up.
Tell me how the plan.
Sit down. Buckle up.
After successfully navigating the field, the pair arrive at the collection of asteroid colonies known as the Rubble. The Rubble itself is beautiful, the set design reminding me of bits of the Belter colonies of The Expanse and the Mars colony of the original Total Recall.
I mean,
the Rubble
visually,
really feels
this show
like
was
it was
amazing.
thrown together as needed and features tons of interesting details, such as people making their own food in whatever ways they can. Here we can spot a Liang Dortmund logo, a company that featured prominently in Halo 5. This might just be a coincidence, but the door that Chief and Quan enter the Rubble through seems like a Fallout Easter egg, what with the giant gear in yellow color. The sound heard when the door opens is, funny enough, the sound of the doors from High Charity in Halo 2.
Interesting.
We hear another familiar sound when it finishes opening, but I can't figure out where it's from. As the Chief enters, the residents are naturally more than a little anxious and even try blocking his path with a forklift.
Funny.
But Chief just literally pushes it aside.
I mean, the man can flip a damn
Incidentally,
tank.
the forklift doesn't seem to be any known design from the games, instead borrowing elements from a few versions. Soren soon appears in partial Mjolnir, though showing off more of his deformed arm. He notes that a bounty has been put out for Quan, not by the UNSC, but the man now in control of Madrigal.
I didn't even cover that part in my review.
And as we see later, he's allied himself with the UNSC and is taking rather extreme measures against those that remain loyal to Jin Ha. As Soren brings the pair to his home, we get a map of the Rubble in the transport car they use, which mentions Habitat Bolivar, a location from Halo: The Cole Protocol. In core canon, almost like the colonies, the Rubble was divided into the inner and outer sections, Bolivar being part of the latter. Habitat Bolivar was also near the dock used by Grey Team in the book. Back to the show, though, transport through the Rubble is absolutely insane.
Yeah,
the Rubble itself, though, is gorgeous.
That shot.
Arriving at Soren's home, we meet his child Kessler and his wife Lyra. We learn later that Lyra came from a colony that was glassed by the Covenant and she lost her family. I can't say I'm basing this on anything specific, but I do wonder if Lyra might turn out to be a relative of Maquis or even just from the same planet.
They got the same eyes.
And I can't believe I almost left this out, but when arriving, Soren asks John to remove his armor before entering. While Spartan armor generally requires a lot of machinery or human assistance, Spartans in core canon have been able to take their own armor off.
That's true.
Citing Grey Team once again, the 3 Spartan team would often operate deep behind enemy lines, often for months at a time, and thus had to be able to not only take care of their own armor, but be able to take it off and put it back on without any assistance other than their fellow Spartans. Outside of Soren's home, we can also spot a ton of BR-55 battle
Noted that.
rifles. We then cut to High Charity to find
Beautiful
Maki
shot.
interviewing the
Beautiful
Kaiden
shots.
warrior, whom I suspect may be Thalvadami, the future Arbiter,
Prophets
before
look
the
so
High
good.
Prophets. Maybe this is just me, but with the helmet off, he looks even more like Thel from H2A. And I neglected to mention this before, but it seems that Silver Timeline elites can just about close their mouths, bringing their four mandibles together. Something like this was done as a stylistic choice for the Halo Legends episode The Duel, but in core canon, Sangheili can't completely close their mouths like this. Anyway though, the warrior reveals that the symbols seen are associated with Halo, the sacred rings, which marks the artifact as a keystone. We also hear from the other two prophets, whom we know to be the prophets of truth and regret, but who sadly go unnamed in the episode. If I were to guess, I'd imagine that this is regret given his fervor, and this one is truth, but we'll have to wait for confirmation. Maki volunteers to retrieve the artifact, though is only allowed to do so after a bit of debate, which to me came across as something of a test to ensure Maki's loyalty. It also seems like Mercy is the head of this triumvirate, though it may just be that Maki has a stronger connection with Mercy than the other prophets. Back on Reach, the Security Council meets to discuss, among other things, the Rogue Master Chief. Surrounding them we can see maps of Reach, which match its design from the games perfectly. Also, while unnamed in this episode, this character here is credited as Colonel Stacker, which may be a version of Sergeant Marcus Stacker from the games.
Time for some hazard pay!
Sergeant Stacker appears in almost all the Halo games and is named after, and played by, the voice actor for Captain Keyes, Pete Stacker. Also, while most of the naval officers are wearing uniforms similar in style to those from the Bungie games, one is wearing a uniform closer to the Halo 4 and 5 design. When asked about the Master Chief problem, Halsey essentially strong-arms Perengoski into improving the Cortana plan, which I totally called, even getting the Admiral to basically lie about the fact that it will use illegal cloning technology. You can really see her staring daggers at Halsey.
I know, like she was pissed.
I will note, however, an oddity when the subject of Cortana comes up. The way they discuss Cortana, it almost sounds like she'd be the first smart AI in the Silver Timeline. For a little context, in core canon, the artificial intelligences of the UNSC are generally divided into two main groups: dumb AI, or AI created with traditional programming methods, and smart AI. Dumb AI are incredibly capable, but remain slaves of their programming to oversimplify. These would be AI like the Superintendent from Halo 3 ODST, or Auntie Dot from Halo Reach. Smart AI like Cortana or Serena are created using scans of human brains, resulting in a much more human AI, one that can think decision making. I may just be misinterpreting what's being said, but I can't help but notice that we've yet to see a smart AI even mentioned.
This is true.
Back on the rubble, we find Soren and John discussing aspects of the Spartan 2 program. John is surprised that Soren has a kid, believing that it was impossible for Spartans.
I did too.
A fairly common misconception about Spartans in the core canon. In core canon, for the record, Spartans can have children, no problem. One of the Spartan augmentations had the potential side effect of suppressing sexual desires, but that was it. The scene also mentions a pellet implanted in the Spartan's back that, quote, enhances battle focus, which in reality keeps Spartans numb to basically everything, making them in effect machines.
I don't usually feel anything.
On Reach, Miranda approaches Perengoski about the Forerunner relic, which it's mentioned that advances in shield tech, camo, and some slipspace advances are largely the result of Miranda's research, a major change as the result of Miranda being more science-oriented in the show. She is the daughter of genius, so it's not too surprising. Though Miranda being the reason for shielding technology was a bit much, at least for me. That feels like it should have remained Halsey's achievement.
I agree.
The next day on the rubble, John shows Soren the Madrigal artifact, after which Soren brings John to see a friend of his, Reth. Reth was apparently abducted by the Covenant and lived to tell about it, though it left him understandably scarred. In core canon, Reth was the name of a Kig Yar who helped humans establish the rubble. I can't say I'm a fan of making him a human here. Even putting aside how it kind of detracts from the rubble a bit,
Kig Yar, that was
human Kig Yar creation at the height of the Human Covenant War was pretty damn cool. The change is entirely pointless as far as I can see. It's little more than a hollow reference, which is the worst kind of change in my opinion. This man could have had literally any other name and nothing about the show would have changed. And I mean, how cool would it have been to see Master Chief react to a friendly, so to speak, Kig Yar? Anyway, Reth reveals a ton of information about the Covenant religion, how they're searching the galaxy for artifacts to lead them to the Sacred Ring, and about Blessed Ones. So, as it turns out, Reclaimers, or humans that can activate Forerunner tech, are fairly rare in the Silver Timeline. When either Soren or Reth touch the artifact, nothing happens.
All humans can do it.
While we still need
game.
additional details, this does call into question the reason for the Human Covenant War in this timeline. In core canon, the war was the result of the Prophets discovering that humans were the chosen inheritors of the Forerunner legacy. To cover this up, the High Prophets declared a holy war against humanity. With Maquis being a member of the Covenant and the rarity of Reclaimers, I'm curious what the truth of the war will be.
Yeah.
I can't yet say if this change is positive or negative. We need more information for that. That all said, there might be a connection to the Spartan program buried in this change.
My buddy David.
In core canon, when searching for her Spartan candidates, Halsey flagged certain genetic markers. Perhaps those markers and the qualifications for being a Blessed One overlap to some degree. The ultimate test for this would be to see if any other active Spartan 2s get the same kind of reaction. The fact that the artifact doesn't react to Soren, though, does kind of put a hole in the idea. However, given that his body had an adverse reaction to the augmentations, maybe something about his genetics was close to being a Blessed One, but not quite there. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this well, and honestly, I'm probably way overthinking things. Anyway, Reth tries to destroy the artifact, causing John to grab it again and see more flashbacks. We see clips of Spartan training, John being kidnapped for the program, tools presumably for the Spartan augmentation process, a transportation hog lacking its turrets, among other brief clips. Following the incident, Reth has an understandable freakout, calling John a Blessed One and noting that the Covenant have one too. John actually gets angry, demanding answers from the crazed Reth before coming to his senses. Before Chief departs, Reth also mentions the ring, and during this moment, a subtle Halo theme plays in the background. Say what you will about the overall soundtrack, the show knows when to drop those iconic notes. The Master Chief then departs from the rubble, noting how, given that he's seen Covenant weapons in action, entire planets glassed, he has to return to the UNSC if the Covenant are going after something even bigger. I really hope we'll get to see a glassing by the end of the season. If not Reach, as I currently predict, then at least Madrigal. Once the Chief is away from the rubble, he activates his Condor's beacon. On the UNSC Stalwart Dawn, Silver Team detects the signal. The Stalwart Dawn in core canon was a Stalwart-class light frigate and only mentioned during Halo Reach. It seems the frigates we've seen in the show thus far are Stalwart-class frigates. Returning to Reach, the artifact is brought to Halsey while John is put in a cell. The Pelican that brings them in has a tower logo, presumably for White Tower, whereas the Condor had Silver Team's icon on it. John and Halsey talk later, John informing her of what he learned and the images he'd seen. Halsey quickly changes the subject, asking about Quan, who, back on the rubble, is watching a broadcast from Intersystem News featuring Venture discussing Madrigal's new partnership with the UNSC. As before, we spot stock tickers along the bottom with familiar companies.
Quan's little...
I've named most of these already, though we can additionally spot a ticker for Optican, a health service most notably found in Halo 3 ODST. As John talks more about the artifact and his decision to save Quan, we cut between that and Maquis changing into more traditional human clothes, during which we see some fairly nasty scars, probably from whenever her homeworld came under Covenant attack. Halsey asks John why he came back, and, after looking at this stamp left by Kessler, says,
There's no one else I could trust.
John is certainly questioning things at this point, though I'm not sure yet if his trust in Dr. Halsey has been completely shaken. It seems like he wants to trust her, if nothing else.
That's his mom.
As the episode comes to an end, Halsey visits her Flash clone, unsealing the pod to prepare it for the Cortana project, hopefully meaning we'll see her fairly soon, if not in the next episode.
I think it will be next
And with that, the breakdown for episode 2 comes to a close. This episode was much more character and story driven than the previous episode,
it wasn't
featuring
no
more
action.
familiar characters and a few new ones. John and Soren are an absolute treat, both as youths and adults. I have to give major credit to the people casting for the show and to the actors themselves. These really look like young versions of John and Soren,
especially
the show,
Soren.
And both play their roles excellently. Lord Hood was great as well, and the play between Halsey and Perengoski continues to impress. The change to Reth was really the only bad part of this episode and this series so far, at least for me. I'm still skeptical of the story, right now, but the actors continue to do fantastic work. The sets, too, continue to impress. Seeing the inside of the rubble was like stepping into a different world from Reach and Madrigal.
The visual of the show, I keep saying that over and over, is so amazing.
Which is perfect for such a location.
If anything, the visuals are
and
so
man,
good.
Venture is absolutely brutal in this episode. All week I was hearing about how this episode really dropped the ball or some such, but I'm still enjoying it.
I say it was just,
However, before we go, I
we're
want to talk
2
about something
episodes
from
in.
last
The
episode.
show is not
The
bad.
book that Maki was reading. As it turns out, the book is real and is about a girl who grows up in the foster system and ends up hating the world. When her life is threatened, she's saved by a guardian angel, and the two must then stop a cult from bringing about the end of days. I don't know if you could find a more appropriate book for a character
That
like
could
Maki.
be.
Special thanks to Michael
Wow.
Counterman on Twitter for pointing this out, and Chief Senpai for tagging me. This may warrant
Nice.
a dedicated video, but we'll see.
Good Easter
For
egg right
now,
there.
thank you all for watching. Let me know how you feel about this latest episode in the comments below, and if I missed any Easter eggs or references, well, go ahead and blast me in those comments. Otherwise,
Never,
this has been
man.
Halo
Everybody
Cannon,
get-
and I'll see y'all next time.
Halo Cannon once again, y'all doing good work. So yeah, I learned some more stuff. That book Easter egg was pretty cool. And Wrath, I have to get back into reading Protocol. I'm currently reading that here and there. But yeah. So again, subscribe to his channel. We want more Halo lore, Halo canon. He's real good at breakdown and everything, as you can see. I'm excited for episode 3. Hope it's a little more action in episode 3 than last week. But I hope we get to see Katana finally, see what they do with her. So until next time, guys, I'll see you when I see you. Peace.